2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is Chad here, and you're listening to My Alien Life.
You know, he's looking at me just frantic, you know, wild-eyed, you know, and I'm trying to make out features of his face, and I'm trying to pick out who he is, and I can't really tell because of the sepia tone if he's black or white, but there's kind of an internal glow as well. So his face kind of came off as yellowish, but he's looking at me and then looking down, looking at me, looking down. He wants me to look down, and I literally see that, you know, look down at his waist, and he's holding his intestines.
Well, the different implants will have different purposes, obviously. For the most part, what they're doing is genetic tracking. They want to track not just you and, like, you know, your location within 3D space, but also your offspring. They're getting radiation data, energetic data, biographic data, genetic data.
My Alien Life is recorded high atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is heard all over the world, and you can listen everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you'll find links to every episode, stories, photos, the My Alien Life Legends page, and much more. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron while you're checking out all the content. I'm your host, Cameron Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
And, you know, before we get started, I just want to thank some people because I had a bunch of generous people do some incredible things for me in the last few months. I plan on thanking them frequently because it's important. I can't do the show without them, without listeners, and then obviously without financial gifts because it's expensive. I've gone into, you know, what it takes to do this. It's not easy. Anybody can do a podcast. And, it's cool. I've seen people do a podcast with nothing but their cell phone and like an iPhone. But in order to do it where it sounds good and you don't lose people during the show, it requires a little bit of money. It requires some computer apps. It requires some computer hardware. It requires some decent microphones, etc. And I'd like to thank some people from the bottom of my heart, including Jackie Kleeb, Edgar Lain, Shannon Turner, Ednor Therriault, Debra Jablonski, Robert Kalil, Kenneth Spreemann, Stephanie Milanowski. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Timothy Earl. Thank you, Troy Thompson, James Cox, Mark Sharif, Mark Sheriff, Elena Stillinger, Becky Sheehy, Rachel Kleinert, Maria Thompson, Shepard Baker, Mary Stone. You make a difference. You are the difference. This art form doesn't exist without you and your amazing curiosity. I can almost be certain that these people are also generous in many other ways and to many other people. So thank you, each and every one of you, from the bottom of my heart. And this show is especially dedicated to you, and every show is dedicated to those people who give selflessly and are super, super generous or generous at all. And it doesn't necessarily mean financially. There's people out there who help in many, many ways. And without them and without listeners, I wouldn't do this. And actually, I would do it, Cass. I would sit here and do it by myself. And sometimes I do. I have in the past.
That's good.
You know, and obviously record that ahead of time and people aren't listening. So, it's easier to get some feedback. I like the feature that, you have to pay for Zoom. And so we do Zoom. And what is nice about Zoom is we get to see each other when we're speaking. Listeners don't get to see us, but, it gives it that little bit of extra closeness, I guess. I don't know what it gives us, but it allows us to actually make eye contact. And so, yeah, that's cool. So we always do these by Zoom meeting, and then we put them up on Apple and Apple Podcasts and wherever you listen to find podcasts. Obviously, Spotify, that's a biggie right now. And, it's nice to have this out there, and we're able to do this so easily. It's easier and easier every time we do it, even though we add different features and make it harder on ourselves. It's nice when it's easier on people who want to listen and do it in a way that, is less work for them. They can just jump in their car or do whatever, on their phone, and they can listen to us. So tonight, joining me again is Cassidy Lightwing. Sir, how are you this evening?
I'm pretty good. Tired, but good.
Yeah, me too. So today was unusually weird for me. I posted something, and I don't know if people got the joke, but I went under the hose today, or the hose went in me. A camera, not really a hose. I don't know what it is. I don't even want to know. You go in for a colonoscopy. The least amount of information that they're going to give me is the best, because, yeah. So, wasn't really feeling great. And, so that was one of those things that they suggested. And that was like my second one. And the first one was like 10 years ago, and I had to beg the doctor to do it, which is really weird. And I said, he had an ad on the radio that said, if you're like 40 or whatever, and you had a family history. And so I was at the doctor, and I said, well, I have a history. Maybe I should have one of these. And he goes, what do you mean a history? And I said, my grandparents on my dad's side both had colon cancer. And he said, wait till you're 50 or whatever. And I was like, really? Because I said, your radio ad says that I should do it. Don't listen to that. And so I was like, what?
Then what's the reason for the ad?
Exactly. What the hell are you talking about? He says, do you really want one? I said, no, I don't want one, but I think it's the safe thing to do. All right, we'll do it. So yeah, that was that. Had another one today, and I'm sure people are really enjoying hearing about this, but it's real life here, and we do real things. So yeah, I had that today, and the best part about it is you wake up, and I got to say, you're a little bit high when you wake up, and that's not a bad feeling at all. And yeah, when you kind of live a stressful life like I do from time to time, most of the time, it's nice to kind of be able to kick back and feel good in some way that really isn't, it's sort of provided by nature, but the long way around nature. But
prescription nature
exists. That stuff, it's expensive. Fortunately, I have insurance, and I think it's a freebie on my insurance. That's a big preventative thing, and so yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure how that'll work out, but how's everything in Colorado?
A little tense.
I got home from the hospital today, and I took a nap, and I woke up and I heard robins chirping, that means like spring. It's a departure from some of the unbelievably bad weather that we've had for like 8 weeks. So that was meaningful, and it was nice to hear.
Bring on spring.
Yeah, it's been a long winter. So let me ask you this. Speaking of doctors, I don't know, you can't see this, but you might be able to see that. I woke up about, I don't know, 3 months ago on my thumb, there was a big lump. And I'm talking a big one. So it's as hard as rock. And of course, me, automatically thinking, well, I wake up in the morning and a lot of times I'm wondering what happened to me in my sleep because, I realize that I'm older and you wake up and, you might have like a dislocated shoulder or something. You wake up and how the hell does this happen in my sleep? But then I have this thing under my skin and my thumb and it's kind of moved, and it's not one of those, those bony protuberances that you encounter from time to time that come and go. But this one has gotten bigger and kind of moved around. And the doc said, oh, we see that kind of thing. But, medical doctors do see that kind of thing. But you think of a guy like the alien hunter, Daryl Sims, who hunts down those things, those little things under the skin that guys like me
implants,
but who knows, who knows? Experiencers have some experiences and some of them bring back some hardware. So what do you say about that? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I always go to that place first. Like there are some medical explanations, but I mean, if that thing popped up, given the work you do, I would definitely get it checked out.
Yeah. And it's moved like maybe 1/8 of an inch. And, it's crazy because, like it wasn't there the day prior and it's like a rock, and it's big. It's like an Advil capsule. And,
that's why I went, implant first. Cause I mean, that should have, if it's medical, shouldn't it have like grown into that?
Yes, exactly. And not in one night, which sounds absurd to me, but it's absolutely true. And, you can ask my doctor or my wife or whoever, but it's there. It doesn't hurt. It feels like, like the skin is not stretched a whole bunch. And it's just bizarre that, stuff like that shows up. And I know the human body is weird. I mean, things can just turn dark for a person, overnight, health wise. But, I did talk to, Daryl Sims a while back in detail, and he's removed a bunch of stuff from a bunch of people, and he's got a collection of that, which is an odd collection.
I believe it.
I've known people. I know somebody who collects glass eyes, and she's a mortician, and I'm like, where do you get these? I didn't ask her. I've never asked her that, really.
Yeah, that would creep me out.
Yeah. She has a big collection. I mean, dozens, not just like 3 or 4. So, but I know people that wear them that have a small collection of really cool ones. And being that we're in this weird age now that you can just about order anything that you think of, I would do it. There's nothing wrong with a crazy glass eye. I would love it. Given your lifelong knowledge of ufology, aliens, etc., where are these implant devices coming from, and what are they? What are they for? What's the purpose? Any thought on that?
Well, the different implants will have different purposes. Obviously, for the most part, what they're doing is genetic tracking. They want to track not just you and your location within 3D space, but also your offspring. They're getting radiation data, energetic data, biographic data, genetic data. A lot of these guys, they want what humans have, like genetically speaking. If you could imagine like the human spark being something that could be found in your DNA, that's what they think, a lot of these guys. Another factor is that you have a lot of different technological bases Most implants are going to be your standard issue metallic type implants because that's what people notice the most. But there's also biotech implants as well that come from races like the mantids and whatnot. Those don't get found as often because when they cease functioning, they tend to get absorbed by the body, like digestative, if you will. But I'm pretty sure Daryl Sims in his collection has several like calcite, deposit style implants. Mostly it's mantids that track people like animals. Most of the other races don't really see that as a very good thing. I mean, even here on the planet, you guys understand it's not necessarily a nice idea to go around clipping things into wild animals. You do it anyway, but that's, but you don't do it en masse because that would affect the species.
Yeah, we do it all the time. And for a variety of different, data collecting processes. It just makes me wonder, what kind of data that, and how they keep track of it, what that looks like and what form. That would be really interesting to see. Well, this is all interesting, of course. I mean, to say the least, it's an interesting topic. And those things, that kind of shit there, man, that keeps me awake at night. Literally.
I don't blame you. I didn't used to think it would bother me until I met the first person I ever met face to face dealing with their implant, and I could see how freaked out they were. And then I was like, oh wow, I guess I should probably be a little more sensitive to this kind of thing.
Yeah, but I would think that anybody that thinks this is I'm not, and of course I'm not saying that this is what happened to me. I mean, I got this thing. But automatically, it's one of those things. It's my go-to thought. But the people who have had a lot of experiences, or maybe even one experience, it's very traumatic, and it's a very, very individualized emotion. So everybody's going to be different and on a different page on this. But I think that the idea that you're giving up some of your individuality, you're giving up some of your privacy, a lot of it really, for some unknown reason. Of course, if there are people out there who can tell you specifically, or they claim to tell you specifically what the process is and what the purpose is. I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say we don't know. We don't know for sure, for certain, but that it's obvious that there's probably data of some sort being collected, whether it be just our location, who we are in our location, or what we're made of in our location. If it is DNA, what sort of information.
I feel the need to point out genetic data goes way beyond just DNA. It goes into the RNA, the mitochondrial DNA, all that stuff.
Right, and even generations, it can go back and to the point of, there's information, and I'm sure we'll see that, as human beings, we'll be able to collect that information and go way back in, as far as groups of people and cultures around the planet, and the relationships that they have. We're seeing that now, and we have the ability to say that that some of my ancestry came from Norway, and it just gets more specific and more specific all the time. So that's interesting, when we study, archaeology and anthropology and social aspects of our culture and how that we relate to each other. But, when we can dig deep and, possibly go back to the beginning of whatever that was. I would love to see some sort of relationship and, us and, 3 million years ago in Africa. And I'm sure it's doable. It's just, we're not there yet, and, we need to find some material, that's that old, and for groups that, or whatever species lived back when. And, it's hugely interesting. I just can't even imagine. And, I can't say enough for people who actually do that. I studied archaeology and really wanted to do that. osteology and anthropology, and but it's just really a tough field, because obviously to stick with it and do it, there's not a lot of money in it initially, and there's not a lot of people out there who are paying top dollar for anthropology data, archaeology data, just because they only do it when it's absolutely necessary, and there's money involved for some certain group who's like the U.S. government, the U.S. Forest Service, and people who are doing excavations and things like that in the and I'm speaking just in the United States itself, but Bureau of Land Management, organizations like that, doing it because of an executive order from 1971 that requires us to do that on any public and federal lands. So, we're only doing it because it's required, and out of respect for some historical figures who came before us. So, I'm rambling, but the point is that there is information that comes out of there, and there is information about people and cultures and tribes and whatnot, and how they relate globally and beyond. I mean, we're not able to garner all that technology and throw it together right now, but I believe someday, and how this technology doubles, every few years, we should see some pretty exciting stuff, in the next 10 or 15 years, and some stuff that's even startling, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with when it comes to advances from like quantum physics and such. They recently just proved quantum entanglement within tardigrades. I mean, so that you can imagine what that's going to mean for your medical technology. I keep saying replicators are right around the corner, folks.
The tardigrade is a pretty amazing little dude. I don't even remember when I first started reading about them, but it hasn't been that long ago, probably in the last 15 years. And kind of like they just kind of showed up one day and people started talking about them. But a pretty remarkable little creature that, is practically bulletproof. And, I like the idea of them sending them and experimenting with them in space. But, then again, I don't like the idea of us sending so much crap into space. So I just saw yesterday an article about Elon Musk and his satellites that are in orbit, and how it's messing up. And when I say amateur astronomers, I'm talking about people who have some pretty high-tech equipment, and they contribute quite a bit to astronomy, from their own backyard. And, there's that, and those people are becoming more and more important all the time. But the fact that, Elon has, his pet projects, and obviously there's some huge developed telecommunications equipment there. We have a lot of stuff up there, man. I mean, when I was a kid, you didn't see much up there, and you see a hell of a lot of stuff up there right now.
Yeah, I think you can actually track the amount of space junk and other things on one of the NASA websites, and it looks like a snow globe.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good way to call it. It is actually a snow globe. And what happens, what really concerns me is the fact that, two of these items up in space crashing into each other and making a million different pieces that are going, Mach whatever, basically could, fly through 3 inches of plate steel. I mean, it could happen and start a chain reaction that could destroy so much up there. And all these really cool features that we have now and things we take for granted, like, our cell phones and whatever else, they could be gone in an instant,
Yeah.
Could you live without it? I would like to live without it.
Oh, I could live without it. I'm a hillbilly.
Really?
Another factor, it's a little bit far reaching, but something to consider is that if you guys don't get a handle on the space junk soon, you're gonna entomb yourself within the biosphere. Okay, if it gets to the point where you can't get anything up there to
Right.
clean stuff out, you're done.
Right.
You're in a race against time.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I mean, if you can't get a craft off Earth and get it through all the shit in orbit, I mean, yeah, we're stuck here.
Yeah. Now there is promising applications in that they're inventing these machines that can clean up like the giant patches of trash in the ocean
Right.
with relatively little effort. That could be converted to around orbital trash as well.
Right. Similar.
There is hope.
Similar ideas. I think that would be interesting to see. But and I suppose as we get more advanced and have laser systems that could basically wipe out huge patches of space junk out there, I think that would be interesting too. I would love to see that.
I would like to apply for the space laser job.
Yeah, that would be cool. Space laser commander.
I've been training for this my entire life. Atari,
Right. Yeah. Atari. That was like, what was that, 3 weeks ago? I was thinking about that. You seemed really interested in vintage gaming. And I think there's, we're going to see a lot of that come back. So I was in Salmon, Idaho this last weekend and had a good weekend there with my son. And they had an arcade with older games. And I haven't seen an arcade in a long time. Some of the Walmarts you walk in, they'll have a few games and they're not that great. But yeah, this was an arcade. It had pinball and it had Space Invaders and Asteroids, Missile Command, and those were some of
all the old classics.
Yeah, that was like 3 weeks ago. We talked about those, and so that's very cool. And I didn't think things like that existed anymore, but I'm sure they do. In bigger cities, but a small town, like Salmon, Idaho, and I don't think it'll exist long, unfortunately. But for certain, I think that it's one of those things that people seek out. I have a friend who travels around and he goes to pinball museums and places where, places in cities where they have, like Vegas has a huge cult following that come there for vintage gaming and pinball. So that's pretty cool.
Not to mention you got to give your kids something to do while you're at blackjack.
Exactly. But, I think, it's not just the kids who are at these gaming places. It's adults who really dig it. I would dig it. I mean, casinos get old pretty fast, and if you can go in there and relive some of the days that have gone by, when you used to spend $10-$20 in a day on video games, which doesn't seem like a lot now, but man, back then, and the fact that we were searching for always looking for that next gaming system. One of the things when we're talking to our guest, when we were talking about the Space Invaders, and she was the national champion. One of the things that I didn't really have a chance to ask her was the fact that there's these gaming systems that came out subsequent to the Atari system. That were so huge, and nothing's been bigger than the PlayStations, but there were so many that came along and failed that she had worked on a bunch of those different things, and we could have talked about that all night, but what I loved, I made the point that you used to play like Atari football and Sega football, and you'd have these little dudes that were a little bit more than stick figures, but I remember in my mind, your mind built a world around that, and you're looking at those things. And you go, God, it's so realistic, and it wasn't realistic at all. You had a football that was like 8 pixels or something, gigantic pixels, and no, not like what we're looking at right now, and you have all that gaming with the backstory, and that I don't have any patience for that, because that didn't exist prior. In my life, we didn't have, where you would log into a gaming system and have a really, really deep backstory went into the game, and it might take you an hour and a half to first kind of struggle through it, or for me to struggle through it, and get to the actual fighting or whatever. But a lot of reading, a lot of video, whatever. I'm not used to that, so I don't have the patience for that. But that's just me.
I love it.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I'm the opposite. If I can get my mind to just calm down and focus on something for a few minutes, it's heaven. So video games are like an escape from my own brain,
Well, that was the other thing too, that I couldn't really, I didn't have the patience for D&D. Not that I really gave it a chance, but I was around it a bit, not very much, but some of my really good friends played it a lot, and so I hung out with these guys, and they would do it, and I was invited for sure all the time, but it was just one of those things that I couldn't really get into. I'm not sure why, because
it's not for everybody.
I was really into the Nintendo NES and system, the original, and that was very cool, and so I did that, and I would still do that. They have, you used to be able to, like on a regular basis, hit a yard sale and find these systems, and it's really tough to find now. And it's really tough to find games, and I have my favorite out there, like Micro Machines and Bionic Commando, and can't think of any others, but Super Mario Kart. And so those were cool, and enjoyed those, and got to play a little bit with my kids as they were growing up. But I felt that was a really creative system that came out, and it kind of just exploded out on the market, and it was everybody was all about that, and all of a sudden Sony came along and dominated this stuff, and I just wonder if we'll ever see anything better than that, than what Sony's pumping out. Obviously, they have the billions, so I don't know.
Well, once we get to that neural interface gaming, things will get real funky.
Right. For me, I couldn't do like anything beyond just normal gaming. I mean, you put a headset on me or whatever, and it's just it's not happening.
I'm with you on that one, like the
tough.
VR stuff. Yeah. My kids love the VR, but not so much.
Right. And what's really impressive is when people do it, and they do actual like quadcopter racing, and with the headset, and that's got to be just so intense. I mean, just so intense.
Looks like fun.
It really looks like fun, but it's fast, man. I mean, they're going through warehouses and stuff. I mean, it's crazy fast. So we have been talking on and off again for quite some time about, other people and their experiences. And I've kind of given you the chance to evaluate, some of the stories that people have. And we've actually talked to the actual people during a podcast. We've actually talked about other people and their experiences and that we didn't get to talk to. So I think I kind of would like to throw something at you about me and sort of get your spin or take on it. And it's one of these things that I wonder about all the time, and I wonder about it because it seems to me that it's a reoccurring theme, and I'm wondering why, and I'm also wondering when it's going to happen again. And specifically, these are things that I don't like to talk about too much. And I don't like to talk about myself because, I have all this self-evaluation going on. to these experiences and what I'm seeing and why I'm seeing it. And, I have my own interpretations, and I don't really think that I'm even right. That's why I say that I'm calling that an interpretation, but there's things that have happened that I can't really explain. And really, that's why I started doing this in the first place, was because I wanted to hear what other people have gone through. I wanted to throw some information out there and see if somebody could provide me with answers. And I wanted to see if I could throw some information out there that wasn't really specific, to see if people had the same experiences that I did, without actually talking about it. Meaning that, somebody may call me, somebody may message me and say, "Hey, did you see this? Did this happen to you?" And a few times that happened, it's like, "Oh my God, how would you even know that?" And that was spooky to me. Wasn't a surprise, but then again, it was. I didn't think that somebody would actually pinpoint some sort of experience that I had, and liken it to their own, or basically say that they had the same experience. But I feel that there's so many people out there that statistically that could happen. But then again, I don't. Statistically, I'm not out there talking to 1 million people and getting responses back. I'm talking to lots of people, but then, a few will message me and ask me if I had similar experiences. So one of the things that happened, and I don't know even I don't know what this is. So, I guess I'll just say it. It seemed to me that, I do have this feeling, because the experiences that I've had, it's not like a wintertime thing. And I know that sounds odd, but it seems like everything I had was like lots of experiences in the spring, midsummer, and fall. Now, that seems to be spread out totally amongst the warmer months, but no, not really. So like early morning, and like when the sun comes up type of thing, sometime between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And I've done a couple podcasts about things that I've seen, talked about them specifically, but these were a little bit, sketchy. So one of the things that I remember, and these were springtime events, very, very early morning when the sun's about ready to come up. I usually find myself out of bed, briefly, and then back in there and fall back to sleep. But one of the things that happened was, there was enough sun coming into the room, into this, back in the day, I used to have this big, big bedroom, very light walls, very high ceilings. And then, through the doorway, there was windows. So, on the east side of the house. So there was a lot of light in there. And, for some reason, it seemed to be something that similar that I heard Whitley Strieber talk about and write about in his book Communion. And I can't really remember what the actual object was or how he described it, but for me, it was basically like a square-bodied robot that maybe been about 4 feet tall, that was like hovering 2 feet off the ground at the doorway in front of me.
Right.
Now, people would automatically say, well, that's something that you woke up and you created that, or you were having sleep paralysis, or you were dreaming. In this case, I had just gotten back to bed and just, laid down just for a second and looked up, and here's this thing. And it was an odd mixture of geometrical patterns, meaning that the body was like a rectangle. The head was round. It had something on it that was like a hat that was like triangular, and like almost like an antenna, like with like sparks kind of floating around the tip of it. And it had what I would say were short legs and short arms. And, it was basically looking at me. I mean, I could tell that it was actually looking at me. It was aware that I was there. And,
right.
This was like 2012-ish, I think. And so it's like hovering, and it's all pixelated too. And it's not like I felt like it was actually, and not even like a projection, but I'm looking at something from very, very far away, or from another time, definitely from another place. But it's very pixelated, almost like color TV a long time ago. But it's just this 3D, and it's 3D, in hovering in the doorway, and that one scared me to death, and but not as bad as other things that I'd seen, because I was used to seeing, not used to it, but had seen really odd things, and that really didn't fit into the the American lifestyle paradigm, and just bizarre, and this definitely didn't. It didn't. It wasn't like a humanoid. It wasn't anthropomorphic anyway. It was sort of machine-like, but not. Sort of cartoonish, but not. So it was a mixture of a lot of different things, and for some reason it looked very familiar. But then it had been a long time at that point that that I had read Communion by Whitley Strieber, but he had kind of described some things in his bedroom that weren't alien-like, but they were alien in nature, just because he was very unfamiliar with what it was. But
right.
And he had kind of described some of that. And it might not have been in Communion. I don't remember, because I didn't go back and read that book again, because I found the book very, very disturbing in many ways. It hit too close to home. But, here's this thing, and, I'm looking at it for probably 10 minutes until it just kind of bobbed around, maybe 6 to 8 inches up and down, back and forth, forward and backwards, and then kind of faded and was gone, and even when it was faded out, where, I could only see maybe 10% of what it was, it was still there, and my reasoning for not believing that it was sleep paralysis or dream or whatever, it was the fact that, there was so much detail that it provided, and, I watched it and observed it. And, on that case, I was afraid to move, but then again, I didn't, I knew I could, but I thought that, if I did move, it would go away. And then I felt that I needed to watch it just to see, how this thing was going to play out. And at that time, in that particular house, it was the first thing that I had seen that was odd like that. So I was concerned about the rest of my family, and I didn't want to like discount this and make it go away without trying to determine what it exactly was. And so that was just really odd. And so that was like a 10-minute or so account of seeing something that was definitely not of Earth, but it was just weird as hell. So that was the first time that I saw something. Shortly afterwards, I would say probably it could have been the next year. Time kind of flew by in that place that I lived, just because in my mind right now there weren't always happy times. So it's one of those things that kind of like put some of those memories behind me. But the next thing that I saw, I literally, where I would lay in bed on the right hand side of the bed, the doorway to the bathroom was right there, and it was probably 6 feet to the doorway, and it was new oak flooring. It was a new house, so I only say that because I believe that old houses have presences sometimes, and you can account for things that are unnatural, or I guess natural, but unnatural to me, that you could see from time to time in old houses. But I'd actually got up, and it's like a springish morning, maybe summer, and went and used the bathroom and laid back into bed. kind of roll over to my side, and I see this guy, standing there, except I couldn't really see his legs. They kind of faded, and I noticed right away that he seemed to be lower, meaning that like maybe he had sunken into the floor a little bit. But then, the more I looked, I could see that he was smaller. Maybe he was only 80% life size. And it wasn't a small person, I could tell, because it was a soldier. And I'm thinking, World War II-ish, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. Anywhere from World War II to Vietnam, I just couldn't really tell, because it was brown, kind of sepia tone, pixelated, kind of like that other object that I'd seen, pixelated. And he's facing the door. He was facing the door of the bedroom, where that other thing that I'd seen probably the year before was floating. And he's facing that way, and then slowly turned toward me. And, I'm trying to make out his face, and he's got a helmet on, and there's netting on the helmet, just like camo netting sort of. And, right. He's looking at me just frantic, wild eyed, and I'm trying to make out features of his face, and I'm trying to pick out, who he is. And I can't really tell because of the sepia tone if he's black or white, but there's kind of an internal glow as well. So his face kind of came off as yellowish, and the uniform that should have been green of some sort, olive drab, was brownish. And but he's looking at me, and then looking down, looking at me, looking down, and he keeps looking like he wants me to look down. And I literally see that, look down at his waist, which is lower, probably lower than the height of the bed itself in my face. And he's holding his intestines. And
shit.
Yeah. So he'd been wounded, severely, and he just kept looking at me, and he's talking, but I can't hear him, and it's like almost like a television that you can't really, there's no volume, but I felt like there should have been volume, and I felt like there should have been a way that I should have been able to hear that, but I couldn't hear him. And, he's looking down and looking back at me, and he's like frantic, like he knows I'm there. He can see me there. And, and I don't know if that frantic look was because I wasn't responding. Maybe like somebody should have responded, jump up and help. But, I was startled, and I couldn't really do anything. And, he just kept looking down and looking at me, and his mouth is moving. He's talking. And, this went on for, I suppose, probably less than 10 minutes, 8 maybe. And, but a significant amount of time where, I can see him, and at times I can make out the face, and I just couldn't get a lot of good detail in the uniform, what he was wearing, what era that would have been, but, that was crazy, and it was just really, really disturbing because, obviously, and thankfully I couldn't really get a good view of, his guts. And I just, that one, I can picture it in my mind right now. And,
right. That would be very traumatizing.
Yeah. It's crazy. And, finally, he just kind of faded away. And, so what I took from that was, it's hard to talk about, that I felt like that I could have somehow, he felt maybe that I could help, but I didn't, obviously there was no way. So I don't know what that was, if it was even part of this world, or even, at one point was part of this world. Really, really, really disturbing, and,
Right.
And that was a day, I had to just like shortly after, within an hour and a half, jump out of bed, go to work, do this and that. And, it's just a weird feeling to have attached to you, all day when you try to go about your normal work week and day and, sort of live with that and, wonder why that happened and what it was that happened. And so, yeah, there was that. And the third thing that happened, and this was, sort of along the same lines. I mean, obviously, was this third thing that happened. I looked at it as the same sort of presentation, for lack of a better word. It's like, is somebody presenting me something? Am I supposed to see this for some obvious reason that I have no idea why? But so, literally, I'm going to get out of bed. The sun's coming up, fair amount of light in the room, and I turn to get out of bed, and I see there's 5 people standing there. Now, these folks were all standing in a group, and 2 adults and then 3 kids. So 2 adults standing side by side, 3 kids standing in front of them. They're all standing in a group. And to me, the total, how should I say this? I felt that they were waiting for a train, which is weird as shit. But, I felt like here they are standing there waiting for a train. And, and I think that I could sort of see an old, like, depot, just parts, maybe bits and pieces, some shapes and angles of whatever, door, window, behind them, just barely. But they were all, it was sepia tone, sort of yellowish, reddish faces, brown, just really simple brown clothing. Look like heavy wool, like heavy wool clothing of, probably turn of the century, somewhere 1900 to the 1930s, something like that. The lady looked like a husband and wife. The lady, had a really round face. She had some sort of bonnet on her head, which was brown. Don't know what the actual color would have been if it wasn't sepia, but so she was heavy. The guy was the man was a little bit taller, maybe half a head taller, and 3 kids, all different ages. And I got a good look, 20 minutes of this one, and so they're looking at me, and once in a while I could see them kind of stretch their neck out. They're talking, like, to get me to hear, easier. But they're like the father, which I assume he is a father. He had his arm around the wife, and then his left arm around, his right arm around a couple of the kids, and one arm around her, and then she was holding, the shoulders of the kid in front of her. And again, I couldn't see their feet very well. It's like they were kind of sunk down into the floor, a little bit lower. Again, they were like 75% life size, I would say. And, once in a while I get the little twinkle of, a pixelated image is pixelated. So I could kind of see, like rough edges that were pixelated, and a little glow coming off of them from time to time. And probably like a platform in front of them with maybe some railroad track from time to time, and that's because, sometimes the whole picture would move up and down a little bit, but they're the mother and the father, they're saying something, and they're leaning forward, and trying to, they're not yelling, but I can tell that they're trying to talk louder to, they're trying to give me a message, and, I'm watching this, and this is where it got different, was the fact that the first two that I described, the first two events that I described, there was some fear there. This one, there was fear too, but I was pissed off because, I don't want, this is a newer house. I didn't feel like there should be anything weird going on in it. I felt like I should be safe in it. And I was pissed off and that I was having to deal with this. So, I got up and they're surprised. They're surprised to see me get up, and I'm walking
They're
toward them.
Surprised you could see them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's in my mind too. And, but I know they could see me, and, but yeah, I don't know really what they were, if they could see me, but they were reacting like they could see me because they were trying to communicate. And then as I walked toward them, they started to fade, and then I walked through them, and, they're gone. And I did it because I was mad, because I didn't want to deal with this in this house, in that house at that time. I didn't want that to be an issue. I didn't want it to be a problem. And I didn't want it to be something that was reoccurring. And I didn't want it, especially to disturb my family, or to be a threat, which, any time, even though it could be safe physically, to have weird shit like that going on could be very disturbing for a family and kids.
Oh yeah, you can bleach hair white. You can do all sorts of things, man.
Right.
So,
and kids act differently than parents, and each kid could have their own reaction. And I just definitely didn't want to bring my family into this, and I felt personally responsible because of all this weird stuff that I've had go on in my lifetime. That that I felt that I drug it in there. I felt like I brought it in. I don't know.
Well, my hypothesis is correct. It was brought in on you first. So,
what do you mean by that?
Well, that first thing that you were describing, I think I know what that was, and the reason why it could have found you is if you had like some kind of not implant, encounter or something, or your father or grandfather or mother. You see what I mean?
No, because I'm totally in the dark on this one. This was. I didn't come up with anything reasonable.
Okay, so first, let me back up a little bit. Outside of this planet, life is considered a little bit differently. You are your children. Your children are you. You are part of literally the same life entity. Okay,
right.
So if, say, for example, a Pleiadian tagged your great grandpa, when they come back, it'd still see you as this part of the same exact life form. You see? Even though you're 3 biological generations removed. So if something had happened to your parents or to you when you were a child, that would leave you automatically sensitive to quite a lot of frequencies. But the particular thing you're describing, the geometric shapes, those are most often associated with probes from the architects. What the architects are hyperdimensional beings that essentially sort of constructed this area of 3-dimensional space. They're not gods, but primitive people could see them that way. So when they want to observe, they'll send in a probe because they can't really physically exist in this dimension.
And these are from who and where again?
I would say they're from the Omniverse. They're life forms out in the Omniverse. They're hyperdimensional entities. I wouldn't call them angels if you're looking for like a power scale or whatever. But they're basically just like humans, just as okay. Imagine the idea that when you daydream, on some quantum level, it creates a reality. Okay.
Right.
So you are essentially, if you have crafted this reality in your mind, right? Same kind of thing with these guys. Okay. Humans on their higher self level, same kind of thing as the architects. Only you guys live in their construction this time around, not the other way around. you know. Sometimes they live in your construct, sometimes you guys live in theirs. But yeah, so they'll send probes in because they can't interact inside here by themselves. Okay. What I would want to know is what kind of, did you have any specific kinds of radiation burns or anything like that? Did you get sick? You know, what were the after effects of looking at these geometric shapes?
Well, I would have to say that I was never ever healthy in that house. You know, it just seemed like it was one thing after another. You know, probably I had heart surgery and 3-4 trips to the ER and probably like 4 trips to the ER. Yeah. And, you know, I never seemed to cut a break. You know, it just never seemed to be easy being there, even though that, you know, I physically built this place and it was great. And, you know, it was kind of like a little paradise. It just never, ever became paradise.
Possessed woodchuck theory strikes again.
Which is?
It's a joke between some of my friends and I. The idea is somebody basically buys the wrong lumber, you know, a woodchuck or animal or something died in the harvesting of the lumber, and then the house gets haunted.
Right.
It happens. It's not always a woodchuck, obviously. That's kind of a pet name for it.
Right.
But like, for example, if you get trees from sacred ground, that can happen sometimes. Or like if an animal was tortured really bad, you know, under a tree or in a glade or whatever. If we could ever have somebody on the show that was Shinto, they could explain it better than I can. But
well, and I always wondered, you know, being in a relationship too that wasn't healthy at all.
Oh, well, yeah, you didn't say that though.
If it was
that could definitely have something to do with it.
If it was me or them, you know, and
or just the combination, you know.
Yeah.
Like, what if you're cool by yourself? She's cool by herself, but together you're a maniac. You know.
Right.
I'm not talking about me and my wife at all here.
You know, and I'd spoken to Timothy Earl, who I had on the show a couple of times, and he's an exorcist, and you know, he was talking about inherent evil, and you know, basically that, you know, people creating something that that inhabits a house or a person, you know, that they've created from nothing, almost.
Yeah, basically. I mean, humans are creators, okay? But what that means is you shape your reality. So if you have a fear, that can come on you, you know. That's like the secret, I think is what it's called.
Right.
I'm trying to remember the name that they call it. It's not manifestation. Either way, when you bring the karma on your own self just through pure, you know, intentionality or wrong thought. You know, for example, you could meet somebody, right? And it'll be perfect. It'll be 100% perfect. It's bliss. You get married, everything's great, and then you both move into the same place together, and then there's just something about that place throws off your whole vibe. You know, relationships with each other, just like relationships with the spirits, depend on a great deal of environmental factors, you know. But that's why love is work.
Right.
You know?
Right. So, you know, and then I wonder, you know, if these were presentations for me to see, why I was supposed to see it and who was the presenter.
See, that's what I'm wondering about the second guy. That one doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're psychic and you don't know it.
None of it makes sense, Cass. I don't know.
Oh,
some of it
sorry,
does.
The last two, the first and the last one makes sense to me.
Really? Why the last one?
Well, people often perceive interdimensional, hyperdimensional, you call them ghosts, whatever, entities as they're passing through. Now, the idea of the railway system affected your species deep down, like to the soul level. The idea that you guys could move in mass transit was a major deal, and it's left a mark in your zeitgeist. So when you guys see interdimensional entities, you'll very often see them as something that you can recognize. Like you'll see them as a miner or a police officer or a soldier, right? In this case, it's a family that's, moving. You said you got the distinct impression of a railway. Well, to be quite honest, there are quite a few vortexes and railways passing through this planet. I think what you saw was basically people on their way through. I don't think you saw ghosts. Otherwise they wouldn't have been surprised you could see them.
Right.
I think what you were looking at is interdimensional entities borrowing one of the railways. You just happened to see them while they were there.
Why do you happen to see them while they're there, though? I mean, why are they just showing up? And
you mean like on the planet, or
just period? I mean, it just doesn't seem. It's not something you see every day. Am I handpicked by random to see 3 different things, or am I in the right place at the right time?
That I don't know. I've told you before. I believe you're on a mission, but that's my cutesy little spiritual belief. Right. If you had like some kind of abduction or something like that when you were younger, it would be a lot easier to make sense.
Well, I have. I mean, multiple times. So, but seeing actual.
I wasn't sure we talked about it yet or not.
No, but things that I see that aren't alien in nature. Seeing actual human beings is weird to me.
Okay, well, I've told you this before. We can sense a radiating energy coming out of your side. Okay. If they tagged and bagged you, then yeah, you would absolutely be more sensitive to hyperspatial energies, radiations, ghosts, spirits, all that thing. It's a side effect. And it's not even a side effect of the material or what they did. It's just once your mind knows something is possible, it's going to figure it out eventually, or
Right.
it's going to die trying.
Right.
So this has a tendency of quote unquote awakening people, and not just humans, everybody. This is this phenomenon of consciousness in this reality. The first time you see some shit, it starts to wake you up.
Right. Now, being that all 3 of them were sort of, I wouldn't say the robotic thing was actual sepia tone as much, but being that all 3 of them had that element to me, it seemed that it seemed steampunk. I mean,
Yeah.
in a way.
I got some.
And I don't understand what that is. But
I got some ideas on it, but nothing solid.
the other, the 4th thing that I wasn't even going to bring up because it didn't happen in the same house, but in the house that I'm currently in was, hopping into bed, and I firmly believe that substance abuse has something to do with opening your mind. But I'm talking about caffeine. I'm a huge caffeine drinker, and so
Yeah.
I make these powerful shots of espresso, and I love it, and I crave it. So it's not unusual for me to can't sleep, and I get up at 10:30 p.m. midnight, have a hit of espresso, and then things get wild. And so here one of those things was I literally get back into bed, and within a minute, I don't know what I don't know if these are reptilians. It's more like a cobra head type of alien, with big eyes on, separated by this cobra, sort of like a cobra head shape with big eyes,
Like you see in India,
kind
in
of
the statues.
kind of like in the dudes in Independence Day. Cobra head's probably a bad way to, but
They got a big old crest.
I want to say the Independence Day alien, but I'm looking, up to my right, and I see the pixelated, and I wouldn't say sepia, but it was lots of halftones, reds and browns, and so it wasn't really sepia. I just felt that was the actual color of this thing, looking down on me, but it's aware of me, but it's frantically. I could see that behind it, it's like a big display of technology, meaning, it's in some sort of a craft or in some sort of a room with a lot a lot of lights and gears and whatever else, I'm not stating what it really was because it's really hard for me to explain what it was. And it's probably no gears up there, but a lot of electronics, a lot of video screen sort of thing. But it's all one big screen, maybe like you've seen these depicted in movies where it's it's almost like a big flat glass display, huge, like a huge monitor, I guess. And behind it, and then it's looking at me and hitting buttons and pulling levers as fast as it can and looking down and then looking back at me, looking back at me, that was in this house, and so the reason I brought that up was I felt some sort of connection. Like this was the thing that was responsible for displaying these other visions that I had, which were so odd. But it may not even have been related, but that's just what I came up with. So
this is going to sound like a weird question, but did you have any kind of impression on what it was thinking? Even just a hunch.
I had an impression that I thought it was not from. I had a feeling that it was there, but it was either a second or two in time behind. Like I shouldn't see it because it wasn't in the same time frame, Right. It was a couple seconds behind, and somehow it just, was able to, almost like there was some sort of time gap there that I experienced, and we caught up to each other, like two rolls of film going side by side, but they're not in sync, right. And all of a sudden they were like one slowed down and one sped up. It was that kind of a feeling.
Well, and I wonder what he was doing.
Yeah, me too. And what it actually was. And that was just for brief, maybe I got to say 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty brief. Not a whole lot of time for observation. I wonder if he was trying to keep you asleep.
I don't know, but it was intense. I was like watching because it was scary. I didn't know, if he was like, it just showed up and it was going to be there for a while, or, I was hoping it would go away. But I brought up caffeine because, one of the more profound and disturbing things that I'd seen, and I did a podcast, but about it was, I was working at a radio station and I literally ate, I think that night I ate a whole bag of the whole thing of Oreos. And then I drank like 3 pots of coffee with a load of sugar. And so, I went home and I tried to go to bed, and it's not sleep, I mean, a person can go to sleep, but it's not like real sleep. It's not like deep REM sleep. It's this disturbed sleep that seems to bring this shit in. It seems inviting, to be in this mind frame.
Well, there's some science for that actually, and that has to do with when you sleep, your consciousness expanding. But that gets more into spirituality than science,
But there's all kinds of people out there who take substances to have an altered sense of reality or invite something in for an experience, whether it be, mushrooms, whether it be LSD, whether it be whatever.
It's disturbing.
So why not caffeine and sugar? I mean, do you know anything more addictive than, sugar's got to be one of the most addictive things there are,
Well,
it's pretty profound how it's affected so many people.
It's less about addictive content and more about what the substance is doing for your brain. In the case of sugar and caffeine, what you're doing is you're stimulating your brain, so it's getting more thoughts per second, as it were. Right. So that's where that feeling of hypervigilance comes over, where you're suddenly paranoid and you can notice everything because you've had too much. So there's no reason why it couldn't help, but a lot of the substances that people are using these days to achieve that kind of, I don't know, nirvana, I guess, or whatever you would call it, not a good idea. We've been getting a lot of reports and requests from help from people who've been using things like meth. And yeah, amphetamines can do the trick, but it is not a good idea. And when you're using a substance to open your eye, you never know what's going to be coming back at you.
Right. Yeah, that's what, that's me being careful because, I don't want to ever open the door. And
caffeine and sugar, you'll just notice it more,
Right. But yeah, I don't want to open the door and not be able to close that door. I mean, I want that door permanently closed. I don't want to experience anything ever again.
Not to talk bad about my father, because I'm not, but that's what happened to him.
What's that?
He opened the door and then he couldn't close it again. And then he just had to learn to live with the eye open after that. And once it was open, he wanted to close it, but it's too late,
So what happened?
He went crazy. He started building cults.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he claimed he could see into the extra dimensional and subdimensional planes, and I'm not sure he wasn't right. But it's one of those things. You cannot close the door once you've opened it. So if you're going to open it, make sure you do it carefully, do it right. All right. Every single one of your cultures has the methods to do it properly. From Native Aborigines to Native Americans.
I've made no secret that I don't want to be a part of any of this. I don't want to have any experiences like this. I don't want to regularly have experiences. I don't want to have any experiences. So, what am I? I call myself a denier, denying my own experiences and trying to paint them as, something very different than what they were. Really trying to simplify it. Well, I shouldn't say that because, I'm sure you have a very simple explanation of all these things, but my simple explanation has it's earthly and really has, doesn't go beyond, fire, water, and dirt. I want it just to be, of the mind, I guess, of the physical properties of the mind who, maybe lose control of your own mind and you're seeing things. But, then again, what's the fine line between reality and what your mind perceives or thinks it does or doesn't? So it's confusing.
Yeah. Especially, no, you're absolutely right. And that's actually one of the scary things about it all. I think that's why people are in denial. I mean, there is a preponderance of evidence for life outside the planet, okay, or for Bigfoot, or for ghosts. Not proof, but a preponderance of evidence. So you tend to get these two camps of either people that dive into it wholeheartedly, like it's all fact, or people who deny it wholeheartedly, like it's all been proven false. And it's that neither one of those is going to provide a rational way through.
Yeah, I don't think that spending a lifetime trying to rationalize the unexplained is really healthy. I mean, we see it. I mean, just in ufology alone, you see plenty of people who can't handle it and are driving themselves nuts, and it's really hard on people. It's been hard on me, and I'll never, I don't think, come to a conclusion. There was a time when I thought, oh, I understand this. I understand what's going on. It's has to do with my own weird sleep patterns. And, there's a lot of kids out there, when I see my own son right now who, loves to stay up until 3 a.m. and then get up at 5:30 in the morning for school. And I couldn't really do that. I mean, it basically turned into it altered reality for sure. Made it extremely different than I think other of my peers. I don't think they were experiencing the same thing. However, being where we were from, I think there were. We just didn't. Again, we talked about that prior. We didn't talk about it,
Right.
because it was personal, and nobody really wanted to admit that there was a lot of weird shit going on.
See, that was one of the first things I noticed here is that people, when they see something, 9 times out of 10, they just dismiss it and they don't tell anybody. But what if everybody just was open about the stuff they've seen? I think we'd see something new,
Thank you, Cassidy Lightwing, and good luck with you and your beautiful daughter. And of course, I always wish you guys well, and tell her that as well. Okay. Good night, sir.
You too. Bye-bye. Be safe.
And again, I'd like to thank Cassidy Lightwing for being on the show tonight. And I would also, one more time, like to thank all my very, very generous people who have basically come into my life and have been totally amazing. And beginning of the show, I was naming all those people who basically were showing some generosity that you don't see as much. But I think in this part of our community, we get to be appreciative of the fact that there's people like me who do what I do. And I appreciate the fact that there's people out there who do what they do. So I'd like to start this show over again and listen to my heartfelt thank you. And I thanked people like Jackie Kleeb and Edgar Lain, and Shep Baker and Mark. So been a weird night and been a weird day for this dude, and we'll just leave it at that. Thanks everybody for joining me once again for My Alien Life Podcast. Please go to my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and you can check out all the stories, all the episodes. Ton of stuff there for you to look at, and there's more every day. And I'll keep adding because people keep inspiring me and keep asking for more. So thank you. This is Cameron Logan, and we'll talk again next week. Good night, everybody.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.